I wasted hundreds of dollars in a failed attempt to improve the sound quality of my Corvette with these Magnaflow mufflers so you don't have to. In this video, I'll show you stock versus aftermarket sound comparisons, as well as giving you my thoughts on these mufflers, which were very mixed. And even if you don't have a Corvette, or you're looking at other exhaust mods for your car, I'll be going over some basics that anyone should be aware of before they start hacking away at their stock system. Stay tuned. Welcome to the channel for anyone who wants to enjoy cars without breaking the bank. Last year I was lucky enough to acquire this bone stock 32,000 mile 1996 Corvette Collector Edition. It's a dream car that I saved up a long time to purchase, and overall I love the car. But I found the stock exhaust surprisingly weak sauce. If you want to hear for yourself, skip ahead to the time code on the screen if you just want to hear some comparisons of my stock exhaust versus the Magnaflows after they were installed. Otherwise, here's why I picked what I did and a little bit more info about the Magnaflows and some other options. Here were my 4 requirements when shopping around. First off, I didn't want to touch the catalytic converters. Now these are near the front of the car and are mostly for emissions purposes. I live in California where there's strict smog testing, so I didn't want to mess with these. Second, I wanted a system that kept the square exhaust tips like these that all Corvettes had from the factory between 1992 and 1996. You'll note, by the way, that my exhaust has these little chrome extensions. Now these are aftermarket add-ons that were installed by the previous owner. There's a few holes drilled into the ends of the stock exhaust, and these just kind of screw right in. I thought they were a nice bit of decoration, so I made sure to keep them throughout this entire process. Third, I wanted to keep my exhaust budget under $500. This immediately crossed any full catback systems off of my list, as they were just quite a bit more. Catback systems replace everything from the catalytic converters back, catback. So the resonators, the mufflers, and all the piping in between. A lot more hardware than just the mufflers, so a lot pricier. Fourth, I wanted a boost in sound quality and a little more volume, but I wanted as little drone as possible. And if you're not familiar with what I mean by drone, drone is also known as resonance. It's not just a loud noise, it's also a horrendous booming frequency that pummels the entire cabin of the car and can even cause headaches over long drives. Drone usually occurs at lower cruising revs and especially on the highway. It's difficult to capture on camera, but here's a few examples of drone that I was able to get with the Magnaflow mufflers installed. Understand that unlike most Corvettes, mine isn't a weekend toy or something I keep in storage. It's my only car, it's my daily driver, so any drone or resonance would be super not cool. One cost-effective option that I found was a kit that would replace the mufflers with a straight pipe. Now this option sounded really awesome. Here's a clip I found. But reading reviews online and in my Corvette Facebook groups, I found too many people complaining about the loud droning issues with the mufflers completely deleted, so I continued my search. Eventually I found these Magnaflow mufflers with the square LT1 tips that seemed to fit the bill. These were much more freer flowing than the stock mufflers, which are baffled to muffle the sound as much as possible. Here's an animation from American Muscle that does a great job of showing how the stock baffled mufflers work compared to the free-flowing absorptive design of these Magnaflows, which restrict the exhaust a lot less. I found these Magnaflows for a pretty good price on Corvette Central, an online Corvette's parts store. They also had the only official videos I could find anywhere. That included this 10-second sound clip, which I'll play in full here so you don't have to hunt for it. Sounded awesome, right? Corvette Central also had this hosted video explaining that this particular muffler was engineered with drones specifically in mind. So this convinced me to go ahead and order the Magnaflows. The mufflers also came with these steel clamps. Now the idea with these is, after you make a cut in the exhaust pipe behind the muffler, the ends of the muffler are designed to slip right over and clamp in place. Here's a video of a backyard mechanic doing this cutting procedure that I found during my search. The thing is, exhaust specialists recommend skipping the clamps altogether and welding the pipes on instead. That way you never have to worry about any exhaust leaks or the clamps eventually rusting away. So you would cut this end sleeve off the Magnaflows and weld it there. I decided not to use the clamps and paid for an exhaust shop to go with the welding option. It cost between $100 and $200. So I went with Morse Muffler in Burbank, California because they had extensive experience with Corvettes and could get it done in just a few hours. The operation went quickly and smoothly. They cut out the old exhaust and welded in the shiny new Magnaflows, and seemed to be a good job. The sound difference with the Magnaflows was immediately noticeable. So here are some before and after videos I took with some high quality sound gear, and I'll give my thoughts afterwards. Now, under performance conditions, I definitely preferred the sound of the Magnaflows, which certainly were louder and more aggressive. I love the sound of the exhaust burbling on the overrun. Like when you're on the gas and then let off, you can hear the unburned exhaust popping out the back. Take a listen. That overrun burble is something the stock exhaust wouldn't do at all. So why was this a fail? Because despite what I was hearing everywhere online, the Magnaflows groaned. But why was this supposedly mild exhaust causing all this drone? Turns out it's because the very architecture of the Corvette makes it very susceptible to droning. It's like one big resonance chamber. Like, not only are the mufflers just a few feet away from your head, but there's mostly air between them and your ears. And worse than that, the angle of the hatchback glass actually amplifies this booming effect. And I think all this explains why the stock exhaust system is so muted in the first place. Chevy engineers took that trade-off to eliminate any drone. You might be wondering, why didn't I hear more complaints about this online? A few theories I have, the obvious one being, I have a manual transmission car, whereas 3 out of 4 C4 Corvettes are automatics. And those extra speeds in the manual were geared more for cruising. So it's possible the automatics don't loaf around in that droning rev range as much as you typically would with the stick. But I think the real reason I didn't hear about this droning issue is most people use their Corvettes as occasional weekend toys, not daily drivers. And if all you're doing is taking your Corvette out on weekends and hooning it around, then you get all the great performance sounds with very little drone. And, ripping through the canyons, I did love the sound of this exhaust. But it's a completely different story during a typical daily commute, where you spend most of your time just cruising along in traffic. Droning resonance is just not what you want to hear after a long day at the office. And by the way, just to see if I could drown out the noise, I even did a cheap little experiment with a mountain of old clothes and rags I just happened to have stuffed into the hatch, thinking maybe I could just buy a sound mat or something later to smother the sound. But because droning is more of a resonance vibration issue than just a sound issue, this had zero real effect. So after a few months of droning around with the Magnaflows, I threw in the towel. Thankfully, I had kept my stock mufflers, so I took them back to Morse Muffler, paid them again, got the Magnaflows yanked out, and the stockers welded back in. Several hundred wasted dollars later, I'm back to where I started. But I did learn a few things. Number 1, if you have a car with a design like a Corvette that's susceptible to drone, be cautious. The manufacturer probably had a good reason to make the stock exhaust so quiet in the first place. Number 2, it might be worth looking into a full exhaust kit instead of just the mufflers like I did. With the money I wasted buying just the mufflers and removing them and then putting them back, I could have just bought a full catback exhaust system in the first place. These setups give the exhaust designers a lot more control over things like sound and resonance. I've also heard from other Corvette enthusiasts that the full Corsa system has little to no drone. Now, while I haven't personally been in one, I did own a Corsa system on my Monte Carlo SS Intimidator, and it didn't drone at all. So if you want a performance sound to your Corvette and you're worried about drone, your best bet is just pony up for one of these full systems. But hey, leave a comment if you had a similar experience or a completely different one. And if you found this video helpful, go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot more car content, mostly much more general than this, coming your way from this channel. Guess I gotta see if I can sell these on Craigslist or something.